I'm Leo Warder for Kit Guru, and this PC here is running the brand new Be Quiet Silent Loop all-in-one liquid cooling system. This particular cooler is 240mm. There are three in the family: 280, 240 and 120. The 280, 240 are both a 30mm thick radiator core. The 120 is a 45 and has radiators and push-pull, so an awful lot of cooling but in a more compact area. Pricing is in line with all-in-ones in the market, so the 280 is £130 in the UK, this 240 is 110 and the 120 is 95. As I say, thicker radiator, dual fans with that. The interesting thing, apart from the fact it's quite clear to my eyes that the hardware is made by Alphacool, the German liquid cooling kings, because copper is the name of the game, is that Be Quiet lists a TDP, a wattage figure, that each of these coolers can work with, can dissipate. So the 280 can handle 400 watts, this 240 can handle 350 watts, the 120 can handle 270 watts, which is pretty darn tooting. There's no processor on the market that puts out that sort of heat. So really what they're actually saying is 120, that'll do you. The others, it's just eye candy. We didn't get a reviewer's guide with this liquid cooler. We got a press release and some bump, but looking at it, it's Alphacool hardware end to end. That's all it is. It looks very similar to Fractal Design's Kelvin setup, which is no bad thing. But Be Quiet is not putting a major emphasis on the fact it's sort of a modular system. So it's a cold block with pump, it's a radiator, it's some hoses, and you can unscrew the things, which I actually think makes a lot of sense, because we sometimes hear that certain liquid coolers can be expanded or extended. And realistically, this isn't quite true. The radiator, I'm quite sure you can pull out the G-cord fittings and junk the hoses, because the hoses and the fittings, they will come apart. But you can't do much with the water block and the pump. Therefore, what you gain from that is a radiator. Neither is it really easy to extend the system. I'm sure you could extend the system. I'm not sure it would be the brightest idea. If you want to go down that route, there are certain liquid coolers in the market that have plug-in GPU blocks, both actually from Alphacool as well as EKWB. But getting back to Be Quiet, it is a smart, understated liquid cooler that installs in exactly the same way as the Fractal Kelvin. The system is quite straightforward. The mount that goes around the water block, it's two halves that just snap together. You put in a backplate if you require it. This LGA 2011 does not require that. It's just four screws, which actually look like they might be cap-head Allen bolts, but they're not. They're Phillips screws. The same is also true of the fasteners that install the radiator and the fans. At first glance, they look like Alphacool's usual sort of little button-head Allen fasteners. They're not. They're regular Phillips screws. It doesn't make the blindest bit of difference in terms of installing. It just means you only need the one screwdriver, which is a good thing. Because this is a straightforward all-in-one, you don't get a USB connection, you don't get any monitoring software, so it is plug in, and then you're relying on the PWM curve of the fans to do their work depending on how you set the bias. It's a 3-pin connection of the pump to a motherboard header. That's it. Setup is almost non-existent. Pick a setting that works for you and away you go. The hardware I've used here is a Be Quiet Silent Base Pro 600 case, which is a relatively small model, very quiet. It flows air reasonably well. The outlets at the top are through some slots. It's not a flow monster king such as the Dark Base 900, which is a big case of Be Quiets I've used in the past. This is more compact, and you have to turn the fans up a tad if you want to flow sufficient air. Motherboard Gigabyte X99 UD4. Processor is Core i7 5820K, so that's Haswell-y. We've got a Radeon R9 Fury X from Sapphire, so that means it has its own liquid cooler mounted at the front. And then we've got the Be Quiet Silent Loop 240, which is in the roof of the case. And that 30mm core means it's relatively slender, and it went up there without too much difficulty, albeit the Be Quiet case has some very sensible mountings in the roof, so the radiator is mounted offset to the front, but in it went without any difficulty. And I think it looks very smart indeed. In terms of what hardware you get with the things, you get a whole bunch of fixtures and fittings to install, of which, because I'm using LGA 2011-3, I needed almost nothing. Essentially, in it goes 4 screws and springs and job done. The fans are Silent Wings 2 fans, which means they have rifle bearings, whereas Silent Wings 3 uses fluid dynamic bearings. Slight shame really. The fans are perfectly quiet, it's just as there are new fans in the market, it's a shame not to get the latest and greatest, but still, there we go. Silent Wings 2 work perfectly well, more than happy. You also get a Y splitter, so you can connect your two fans together and then plug it into one PWM connector on your motherboard, which makes perfect sense. And it all works absolutely lovely. I note that the 240 has a maximum speed rating according to the spec figures here of 2000 RPM. I'm fairly sure the motherboard BIOS reported maximum speed was 1800. Never mind, whether it's 1800 or 2000, that's flipping loud. You don't want to go that high. On the other hand, turn it down, either use a manual setting or a profile that works nicely. 1400 is audible, but in this case works very nicely. When I run the thing on normal mode in this motherboard, the BIOS was running them at 1100 RPM, and that was basically inaudible, so that I had no need to go to a silent mode. Normal 1100 RPM, I could not hear the fans, but the cooling wasn't really quite tickety-boo. So I went for slightly faster, slightly noisier, was entirely happy. In terms of performance, truth is, it did okay. Basically, I would say the silent bass, silent loop 240 rather, silent bass case, silent loop cooler, was essentially the same as a Corsair H100 IV2. There was next to nothing to choose between. Pricing, the Corsair is slightly cheaper, and you get monitoring software. So it's almost a direct toss-up in terms of which you prefer in terms of the look and the feel of the two cooling systems. This is smart understated copper. The Corsair aluminium radiator works absolutely fabulously. It's become an industry standard. Works absolutely sublimely well, and you get monitoring software. I instead prefer to use NZXT's CAM software if I have a liquid cooler that doesn't have any monitoring software. Works perfectly well without a USB connection. So either route is entirely acceptable. The funny thing is that Be Quiet makes quite a feature of the fact it has a decouple reverse flow pump, which means that the coolant flows in a different way to normal. I have to say it worked perfectly well. If you hadn't told me that that's the technology they'd used in this, I wouldn't have had a clue. It's just, to me, an all-in-one that's absolutely fine, but quiet, which in fairness to them is the point. I have to wonder, and I have no inside information here, I have to wonder whether this change in the all-in-one pump mechanism is somewhere around Ace Tech has patents on this sort of technology. I wonder if this is Alpha Cool stroke Be Quiet being just particularly clever and coming up with a system that no one's going to say that they invented first, in which case fair play to them. The fact that this is the headline feature of the system, on the other hand, truth be told, neither here nor there to me. Overall, I like this system a lot. Installation was a snap. It looks smart. It does the job. I cannot honestly claim it brings anything particularly new to my world, which, judging by the claims that Be Quiet is making, I was expecting slightly more. Having said that, if you take that pump technology off the table, you look at the thing, copper radiator, what's not to like? It's a funky and nice piece of hardware that I like a great deal, but it doesn't quite blow my socks off. Nonetheless, Be Quiet's got a new liquid cooler. It's called Silent Loop and it works really well. If you like this video, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. Leave us a comment. Come across to Kit Guru to see the photos and such like that go with this review. And if you want more videos from Kit Guru, click to subscribe. I'm Leo Walter for Kit Guru. This is Be Quiet Silent Loop all-in-one 240mm.